Good morning, I'm Laura Goodwin. Coming up, will there be tax hikes or tax breaks, or maybe even a plan for tackling the cost of living in the Chancellor's budget on Wednesday? I'll ask the Scottish Labour leader about his budget asks. And the Housing Secretary, Mary McCallan, is also here with her wish list for number 11. All that to come on The Sunday Show. It feels like speculation around the Chancellor's budget has been going on for ages. Well, this week we will finally hear what is actually in it. Different tax proposals have been floated, with plenty of leaks and U-turns gracing newspaper headlines. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has faced questions over his leadership, which doesn't bode well in Scotland. There is a Scottish Parliament election here in 6 months' time. Well, Scottish Labour leader Anas Sarwar is joining me in the studio. Thank you very much indeed.
Good morning, my pleasure.
Now, listen, as we were saying, a lot of leaks, a lot of speculation about what is in this budget. Do you know any better than the rest of us what is actually coming?
Look, I think let's get the budget done this week. I think it's been far too long a drawn-out process and far too much speculation. I'm really clear about what this budget needs to do. It has to be a Labour budget with Labour values running right through it. What does that mean in practice? This has to be a budget that reduces poverty, and in particular child poverty. That's why we have to see the end of the two-child benefit cap, which would lift tens of thousands of children out of poverty. It has to be a budget that confronts the cost of living crisis and improves living standards. That's why we need a package to bring down energy bills. And it also has to be a budget that, if it does contain tough decisions, it doesn't go to the Tory playbook of austerity. There has to be a rejection of austerity and demonstrate that we have to invest in our public services, invest in our people and invest in our economy. So
can we drill down into that a wee bit? What would you like to see on the cost of living for Scotland?
So energy bills comes up time and time again. Now, I welcome the fact that economic stability has meant that the average mortgage is £1,500 lower. I welcome the fact that we have wages on average £1,800 higher since Labour came to power. I believe more progress will be made on that in this budget and in the coming months. But people still feel like the cost of living crisis is biting. That's why we've got to bring down the cost of energy, not just for the consumer, but actually also, I think, for businesses who are really struggling too. So let's have a significant energy package in this budget.
OK. Ed Miliband said that our energy bills were going to come down by £300. Well, actually, they're going up again in January. What a time of year for them to go up again. So what are we talking about? When we talk about hard decisions that the Labour government has to make and energy, what are we really talking about here? Are we talking about looking at, green energy levies? Talk to us about what you think would help.
Well, I think there has to be a holistic approach to this. We have to reform the energy market. That's going to take a bit more time. We do have to invest in the renewables opportunity that exists in our country, disproportionately in Scotland. That's why I welcome the significant investment in that green energy of the future. That's why having public ownership as part of that is really important. And that's why we've set up GB Energy, headquartered in Aberdeen. But it also
that's not really making much difference yet, though, is it?
Well, to set up an energy company, to employ its staff and to start its investments is going to take time. That's not going to happen overnight, and significant progress has been made, and more progress needs to be made. But I wholeheartedly agree with you, Laura, that for lots of people, yes, they want to see the reform of the energy market. Yes, they want to see a different shift in balance in terms of how that operates. But that is going to take time. That doesn't relieve people's pressures in the here and now. And that's why we need a significant package in this budget that brings down energy bills.
OK, what about windfall tax? Scrap it, say oil and gas producers. They're really struggling. They say 1,000 jobs are going every month in the oil and gas sector.
What I'd say is the oil and gas sector has got an important role to play for decades to come. That's why we have to have a sensible approach around licensing and consenting. It's why we have to have a sensible approach that exists around allowances to make it investable propositions for companies. But we also have to recognise that many oil and gas companies, now I recognise there'll be some smaller and medium-sized oil and gas companies that don't fit in this frame, but many of the larger oil and gas companies are still making billions of pounds in profits at the same time as people's energy bills are going up and people are being pushed into fuel poverty.
The electricity companies
so we have got to have a balance.
Producing so much energy in Scotland, they're making huge profits too.
Absolutely, so we've got to have the right balance. And I think looking at some of the demands that are coming from other political parties is they want to give a tax cut to some of the most profitable companies in the world, whilst they want to increase income taxes for some of the poorest people in this country. I don't think that is the right balance and fair. So I want a fair taxation system that puts the burden on the right people's shoulders, but also a significant package to bring down the cost of energy for the consumer.
Yeah. In terms of the Scottish Government, they are waiting to find out what implication this has for their spending. And they've been critical today of the fact that this has taken so long. They've got to set their budget as well. Should the Chancellor not have picked up the phone and had a chat with the Scottish Government about what was going on? Should not be better dialogue about that?
I know the Chief Secretary of the Treasury was in Scotland meeting with the Scottish Finance Secretary, but I'll take no lectures on economic competence or good government from the SNP. This is a Scottish Government that has been given £5.2 billion of additional money since Labour came to power, but what have we got to show for it? Our waiting lists are still far too long. Our schools are still falling down the international league tables. They're still wasting billions of pounds of money every single year in our country. And that's why in 6 months' time, we have an opportunity to get rid of this SNP government and take our country in a different direction. Now, they'll want to pretend the election in 6 months is about who the Prime Minister is or who the UK government is, when in actual fact, Keir Starmer's not standing to be First Minister, Rachel Reeves is not standing to be First Minister, Nigel Farage is not standing to be First Minister. Only two people can be First Minister after the election in May, me or John Swinney. And I don't think this country wants or needs a third decade of John Swinney and the SNP. What they need is a new direction, and that's why I offer.
Well, Mary McCallan's coming up after you, so we'll put some of that to her. But I want to ask you about this suggestion. Yes, Keir Starmer isn't standing in the Scottish election, but you cannot deny that his popularity has an impact on your campaign. And let's face it, it has been a tricky few months, 18 months for the Prime Minister.
Look, as a former dentist, I've already said that there's been teething problems in the early days of a Labour government. But are we really saying that an election in 6 months' time that has consequences for people living here in Scotland, when you think about our schools, our hospitals, our care homes, our police service, housing, and so much more, that is the sole responsibility of an SNP government, that we're going to give them a free pass on 18 years and make it an election about a party that's been in government somewhere else for 18 months. I think that pays a disrespect, actually, to the Scottish electorate. Our government is not about protest. Our election is not about protest. It's about making different choices. And there's only two choices people can make in that election in May: record-long NHS waiting lists with John Swinney, or a former NHS dentist that's going to do whatever it takes to fix our NHS with me. It means school ground politics with them, with a block on new nuclear energy in our country, or significant investment, tens of billions of pounds of investment and thousands of jobs with new clean nuclear in our country. It means schools falling down the international league tables with John Swinney and the SNP, or investing in our young people with apprenticeships, college and university places under me and a Scottish Labour government. That's the choice people face in 6 months' time. John Swinney and the SNP might want to talk about someone else or somewhere else. I'm going to make this election about Scotland because that's why it matters.
But you can't escape the issue of what's going on at Westminster. And maybe you can give us some insight into what is going on, because it has been a baffling couple of months. We've had U-turns on winter fuel payments, the need for an inquiry on grooming gangs, benefit changes, WASPy women. That, we think, is maybe being reconsidered. I'm not questioning the decision to change course on any of these matters. I'm questioning, why have there been so many missteps in the first place?
Well, the decision to withdraw the winter fuel payment was wrong. I said that from the outset. I said a Scottish Labour government would reinstate a winter fuel payment. I'm pleased that the Chancellor has seen sense and she now will restore.
But it doesn't look great, does it? It doesn't look great to have so many policies and then change your mind. On top of that, we had Angela Rayner resign, Peter Mandelson resign, questions about the Prime Minister's closest aides briefing against other ministers. And on top of that, polls suggest Keir Starmer's net satisfaction rating is minus 66. I think it makes him the most unpopular UK Prime Minister on record.
Well, look, I don't dispute that there have been challenges with a UK Labour government, but that's not the choice in 6 months' time. The choice in 6 months' time is not to say the best that Scotland can do is protest or send a message to a government in Westminster. Scotland can do much better. We have to make decisions on the future of our National Health Service. Just yesterday, we announced a new mental health emergency service, because right now, thousands of police hours are being lost because police officers are having to respond to mental health calls rather than mental health professionals. We will have mental health professionals responding to those calls, giving appropriate care, triaging properly, and making making sure those patients, if they need to go to an appropriate setting, get to that appropriate setting. And at the same time, those police officers will be left to do their actual job, to be in their communities, engage with businesses, and make sure they're fighting crime. That's a difference we can make in 6 months' time. Secondly, we know...
To do that, you'd need to win an election.
Absolutely, and I am absolutely determined that we win that election in 6 months' time, because I actually have more hope in our country than even the SNP or Reform do. There are now two types of politician in our country. There are politicians like John Swinney and Nigel Farage that look at a problem and find someone to point the blame at in order to divide our communities and try and win an election, or a politician like me who looks at a problem, finds a solution and argues how we deliver that solution and brings our country together. That's the choice people face in 6 months' time. More division, more decline, more chaos with the SNP, or a new direction for Scotland with me.
OK. Something else Labour say they're going to do is overhaul immigration policy. Concerns have been raised about some of these changes, specifically that legal migrants would have to wait for legal settlement for far longer. First of all, what real difference will this make in the short term? And what concerns do you have about the impact this might have on Scotland? Because the care sector here says they're very concerned about that.
Well, let me come back to the care sector in a moment, because it's really, really important. But I think it's important to state right from the start that Scotland has always been an open, welcoming and tolerant country.
Have you told Labour that?
It always has been. And actually, I believe the UK has been too, and that's what a UK government believes too.
Right.
But if we want to maintain...
far harsher than the Conservatives were proposing.
If we want to maintain community relations, if we want to make sure that we don't allow our country to go into the far-right narratives that we've seen from others, then we can't close our eyes to a problem. We have to look at a problem and confront it. And the fact of the matter is, we have a broken immigration system, but we also have a broken skills system, and that comes to care homes, and I'll come to that in a moment. And unless we confront that broken immigration system, we are not going to get the results we want. So I actually think it was very brave of our UK Labour Home Secretary to say, yes, we're going to make it harder and create disincentives for people to want to illegally cross the channel. But at the same time, we do have to open up more safe and legal routes for genuine asylum seekers and refugees to come to this country. You would not have heard a Tory Home Secretary say that. You certainly wouldn't hear a Reform Home Secretary say that. But on the social care sector, on the social care sector, look, we've got to take a balanced approach. Yes, it is true that we will need short-term legal migration in order to fill the gaps that exist in our social care sector. But if we are to truly transform our social care sector, then it needs adequate investment from a Scottish Government. That's something I will deliver. But it also needs fair pay for our social care workforce. I have been campaigning for 5 years for the fight for £15 an hour for our social care workers. Now we need to go even further and faster, because I don't think it's acceptable that we pay our social care workers, one of the most important jobs in the country, poverty wages, which means we are then over-reliant on migrants to come and fill those jobs. Let's give people the skills they need. Let's pay them properly. Let's make it an attractive profession for people in this country so we can have the social care system.
And this idea that people might have to wait 20 plus years for settled status. I mean, you live a lot of life in 20 years. You've never really answered this question about what would happen to children born during that period, whether they would be entitled to stay here. Why are you not?
Well, look, there's a few different. There's a few. Well, you just asked me about it, Laura, now, so I'm happy to answer the question. Look, there's different layers in terms of that 20-year period. Right now, it's already the case that if you are here on asylum or refugee status and you have a child, you don't automatically get citizenship. So that is not changing in terms of that legal position. But there are layers within what the Home Secretary has proposed. If you are demonstrating contributions to our society, if you're engaged in your local community, if you are not acting as a burden on the state but actually providing to the state, then there are faster ways for people to gain that leave to remain in this country. It's a balanced approach that needs to be taken.
And children born to those waiting for their settled status?
Well, currently, right now, you don't automatically get citizenship in the UK if you are born in the UK. That's the legal position as it currently stands. But we have to have a fair immigration system that confronts the fact that net migration reached 1 million just 2 years ago. To put that into context, When my grandfather arrived in this country in the 1940s, net migration was about plus 25 to 30,000. 2 years ago, that got to plus 1 million. So we have to have a managed immigration system. We've also got to
You're broadly supportive of this
to,
move.
So I think we've got to fix a broken immigration system, but we've also got to match it to a skill system, so we are giving our own young people the skills they need to make it attractive for them to work in many of the sectors that we are currently over-reliant on migration. So a balanced system is the way forward.
OK. Last question to you about football. You're planning to go to America, watch Scotland in the World Cup. What are you thinking?
I would love to go to America to watch Scotland in the World Cup. I'll be cheering them on. I mean, what happened this week was absolutely incredible. They gave a huge boost to the entire nation. And you know what made me really emotional thinking about that result? Was I remember rushing home from school to watch the Brazil-Scotland game when John Collins scored that penalty and we thought we were on top of the world, me and my friends jumping up and down in jubilation. And honestly, the fact that my kids will now get to make Scotland World Cup memories is absolutely phenomenal. But it also makes me want to be First Minister even more in 6 months' time.
Well, listen. Will Keir Starmer be the Prime Minister when Scotland go to the World Cup?
Well, I believe so, and I absolutely think that will happen, but I'm more interested in who the First Minister is going to be, and that's going to be either me or John Swinney in 6 months' time.
OK, Anas, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having us.
Now, from 10:30, Lucy White will keep the conversation going around the budget. Not surprising, that is a big talking point in a lot of the papers today. Let's have a look. Scotland on Sunday, businesses in last-ditch plea to Chancellor Reeves scrap the windfall tax. Also in the Mirror, I'll get a grip on cost of living. Lucy will be going through them with filmmaker Talat Yaqub and law lecturer at Glasgow Caledonian University, Dr Andrew Tickell. And just a wee reminder, don't miss the new Radio Scotland breakfast show tomorrow morning. Tune in from 6 a.m. with Laura McKeever, Martin Geisler and Phil Goodlad, who will bring the latest news and sport right through to 9 a.m. Now, while budget plans are made in Westminster, the decisions about how some of that money will be spent in Scotland lies in the hands of the Scottish Government, who already have their own set of problems. Scotland's Auditor-General has already warned there's a £5 billion funding gap forecast for the next 5 years. While making the case for the budget and how that works for Scotland is the Housing Secretary, Mary McKellen. Thank you very much indeed for being with us.
Morning.
It's a big budget, isn't it? A lot riding on it. What are your asks? What do you need from them?
So this is a big budget, and I think, frankly, this has to be an opportunity for this chaotic Labour government to demonstrate that they can get something right. We are fundamentally calling for a budget which invests in public services. For far too long, the services that we all rely on have been cut to the bone. We need action to stimulate growth in our economy and Scotland's industrial base in particular. And fundamentally, we need serious action to tackle the cost of living. For years now, the story with energy bills in particular has been them going up, and a seeming unwillingness or inability of UK governments to do anything about it. That just can't go on. People can't pay their bills. People can't pay their bills and they're accumulating debt. One particular thing that the Scottish Government has been working on with industry experts in Scotland, and which we're calling on UK to adopt, is a social tariff, which is a targeted and at-source discount, which we believe, and I published the methodology of it this week, could save households and modelled bills up to £700 a year, could take hundreds of thousands of people out of extreme fuel poverty. It's backed by industry experts. It's been costed. I've put the proposal to the UK government. They urgently need to adopt it. They need to demonstrate they can get something right and that they can help people with spiralling energy costs, because in an energy-rich nation like Scotland, no one should be struggling to pay their bills.
So have they responded to your proposal, and who actually would then pay for that?
So that we have put the costs to the UK government, and it would be paid for much like any other measure within the budget. And we think it should apply across the United Kingdom. I have put it to the UK government. Our Finance Secretary, Shona Robeson, has put it to colleagues. I have to say, though, communication has been very difficult to establish over this most important budget process. We have been calling for meetings, not least when the Chancellor decided to fly a kite on income tax and then seemed to retract from it. I mean, it's very chaotic. We need certainty. Just last week, the First Minister was in London, and neither the Prime Minister nor the Chancellor could make time to meet the leader of Scotland to discuss the implications of the budget for Scotland. It's completely unacceptable. I'm afraid the UK's approach to this budget has been characteristic of the chaos and incoherence that we have come to know of this Labour government.
I mean, budgets are tricky and sometimes you have to change course, sometimes you have to change decisions. We know that the Scottish Government have a deficit themselves, so you too will have to make difficult decisions when you make your budget.
So we have to balance our budget every year. That's the nature of the devolved settlement, and we've done that every year and we'll continue to do it. And actually we just recently had results of our ability to release bonds, which gave a very favourable picture of the Scottish economy. But we do have difficult decisions to make, Laura, and you know, reading about it in
you
press
have to do on heating, on green measures around heating.
I did, absolutely, because I'm waiting for clarification on what the UK are going to do to, if I can put it, rebalance the cost of gas versus electricity. I've got 34% of people in fuel poverty just now, and I'm just not going to take forward a measure that could exacerbate that whilst I'm waiting for clarity from UK government. So I'll take a pause. That's the right thing to do for the people of Scotland and the money in their pockets.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, they need to take action on energy. We want to see action on the cost of living and for child poverty.
Yeah.
I know that there has been increasing speculation that they're going to do something on the Scottish, on the two-child cap. If they don't, we stand ready to mitigate it in Scotland.
Okay, let's circle back to energy, because you're absolutely right. It's something people are worried about. It's going up again in January, and we are a nation producing an awful lot of energy. What is going wrong in this mix? Why are we not getting a fairer settlement? And why are you not able to progress green measures that you agreed to in the Butte House Agreement because of your concerns about fuel poverty?
So there's probably a couple of things I would point to there. First of all, Energy Profits Levy. Introduced during the height of inflationary pressures, and we supported it at that point. But we also
Did you not back that?
That's what we supported it at that point. But we also said, look, where there's windfalls across the whole of the economy, we should tax it to support households who were struggling. Not just our Aid on Scotland's profits, but you know, Amazon and others. However, it's been extended. It's now nearly 40%, and it's gone on too long, and it's having a really adverse impact on Scotland's industry. So that's one quite unique example of poor management. Fundamentally, though, Laura, I'm a minister that represents people in Scotland. I'm in the Scottish Government. This is Scotland's energy. We don't have a say on how it's managed or put to the benefit of the people of this country. So, yes, I want to see changes on Energy Profits Levy. I want to see a UK government willing to support workers in Grangemouth and in Musmoran, the way they have been for Scunthorpe with British Steel or Jaguar Land Rover. But ultimately, we need the power over Scotland's energy resources in Scotland's hands so that we can make it work for our people.
Something that we are expecting Rachel Reeves to announce is house building, changing the planning system, which doesn't necessarily affect us here, but is a commitment towards reaching those targets. That is, of course, your portfolio. We aren't meeting our targets on building enough homes, are we?
Well, we have a target to build 110,000 by 2032, and we remain committed to that. We have a really strong track record in Scotland of house building and affordable house building primarily. So if I can set that in some context, the SNP have helped deliver about 140,000 affordable homes since we came to government, and about 100,000 of them have been for social rent, the most affordable rent. And that's gotten us to a position right now where we have 47% more affordable homes per head of population than England, and 73% more than Wales. So that's a good starting point, but I am under no illusion whatsoever that there's considerable strain. We now need a significant ramping up, and just in September I released a housing emergency action plan.
Has that made a difference?
Well, it's 808 million this year for affordable homes. One really specific thing that it did is it gives money to councils now. It says go out and acquire, go and buy family homes off the market now, not to wait for new homes to be built. And all the while, I set out a 4-year plan for a significant uplift in funding and therefore delivery of affordable homes. And it has been widely welcomed by...
But it's still not enough. The bottom line is we're still facing more people, more children being homeless than ever before.
Yes, there's too many children in temporary accommodation right now in Scotland. And what I would say is, temporary accommodation is a vital safety net. It's essentially the state stepping in and putting a roof over people's heads to make sure that they have that. But it ought to be temporary. So that's why this significant house building programme that the government released in September is going to take us through the next 5 years with more money, focused plans, changes in planning that we've already taken forward, and a really close working relationship with industry to make sure we can achieve it.
OK. We're here in Glasgow, and the City Council leader, Susan Aitken, has said that asylum policy is to blame for soaring homelessness costs. She has said that she's raised concerns about Holyrood legislation, which allows a homeless person with no connection to the city applying for short-term accommodation. And she has said that she's asked the Scottish Government to pause the legislation several times. This is the leader of the biggest council in Scotland saying we're really struggling with this, not apportioning the blame to asylum seekers, but saying this is a policy that is not working for us. Help. Why aren't you helping them?
Well, so we are. I talked about that. The more money that I've made available.
But are you pausing this policy? So
this policy, and it's quite niche, but we can go into it. So it's local connection. And basically it means that somebody who has a local connection to another authority in Scotland, if they present in Glasgow, couldn't be sent back to, say, Inverclyde or Edinburgh or Highlands. That's all that that policy does. It is actually a much older piece of legislation which says that Home Office accommodation can't constitute a local policy. It's quite complicated, but here's the...
Does that not mean that Glasgow's taking the burden then of this, that you aren't dispersing people to other parts of the country?
So I would like to see other local authorities assisting Glasgow to house more of the people who we want to welcome and give a safe and dignified place in Scotland. I think there is absolutely no doubt that Glasgow is under considerable strain.
So are you open to pausing the policy?
So I will not roll back on the homelessness rights of people in Scotland in order...
Even if the leader of Glasgow City Council is saying, we are really struggling with this.
So what the proposition put to me is that you should roll back on the homelessness rights of everyone in Scotland in order to mitigate the failures of UK Government Home Office policy. I'm just not going to do that, not least because Scotland should continue to be a welcoming place. What I will do is make more funding available. I'll make more support available. I will work with local authorities to share the burden and the opportunity of migration. But fundamentally, what Susan Aitken and I are completely united on is that the Home Office, having for years allowed asylum applications to stack up, leaving people to languish, creating a hotels policy, which has been a complete failure, they're now running through them far too quickly without proper support for local authorities and without proper move-on periods. And that is creating a situation where a refugee in the UK is almost destined to become homeless. And
but just be clear, that is something you could do, you just don't want to.
I am taking action right now. That significant uplift in funding is supporting the efforts across all local authorities. What I won't do, Laura, is roll back on our homelessness rights for everyone in Scotland because of Home Office failures.
OK. We had the COVID inquiry report this week, which looked at the response of the UK and Scottish governments and concluded that had action been taken sooner, thousands of lives could have been saved. One of the specific criticisms of the Scottish government was that some government ministers were excluded from making decisions. You are now in the government of Scotland. How will you ensure you're in the room should there be another pandemic?
Well, Cabinet is the forum where decisions are made for government, and that was the case during the pandemic. I think, look, what I can say on that is that ministers during the pandemic wrestled with what will have been undoubtedly the most difficult set of circumstances, advice that was developing, both clinical and other. There will not be a day goes by where the ministers that were involved in that do not think about the implications of all that we did, but everything that Scottish Government ministers during that time was done with the best interests of the people of Scotland at heart. And I think...
But do you think lessons have been learned, that there might be benefit to bringing more people into these big decisions? Lessons
will be learned across the board, Laura. COVID was just such a shocking and unprecedented experience, but I think looking back, people will see that the Scottish Government ministers and Nicola leading in the front in that regard, were serious.
Should there be an apology?
I think that the ministers have been really clear that where the right decision was not reached, of course, that's regrettable, and of course we're sorry about that. But the fundamental point is it was unexpected, learning as we go, and with complete seriousness.
We've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Bye-bye.